I'm Ed Gordon. Tonight, a BET News primetime exclusive.
This is the most consequential election of our lifetime.
We deserve bodily autonomy. We won't go back. We won't go back.
Months away from the critical 2024 presidential election, we engaged 3 influential and outspoken members of Congress about key issues that matter to Black voters.
We want gun violence to stop. We're broken.
Specifically inflation, everything is more expensive now.
The state of abortion rights in our country is kind of terrifying because it just keeps getting cut back.
This fight is an American fight.
We know that you can create change with attention and with opportunity.
Up next, an exclusive BET primetime special. What's at stake? The 2024 election. Good evening, everyone. I'm Ed Gordon. Most political experts predict that Black voters will play a decisive role in determining the outcome of this year's presidential election. Voter apathy is real, but the importance of your vote and the critical issues at play cannot be overstated. Tonight, we will concentrate on 4 of those issues: the economy, gun violence, the future of DEI, and reproductive rights. I'm pleased to have with me 3 distinguished members of Congress. First, Representative Maxine Waters of California, Representative Joyce Beatty of Ohio, and Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas. I thank you all for being with us. Greatly appreciated. Let's dive right in. And the first thing, and I think we've seen polls that say this is the #1 issue, quite frankly, for African Americans, but for all Americans, and that's the economy. Congresswoman Waters, let me start with you as former chair and now ranking member of the Financial Committee. I want to ask you about the idea that America, we should acknowledge, has come out of the pandemic better than almost and arguably any nation in the world. Yet, we are struggling not by means of unemployment, but by means of the everyday item, the grocery items, as we like to say, gas and the like. What do you tell voters who believe that things were better under Trump and that we're not moving in a way they'd like to see at this point?
Thank you very much, Ed. You know, we're dealing with inflation. And of course, inflation is what causes the prices to rise. Of course, groceries are a little bit higher, gasoline, and some of the other items that we need for our daily living. But I want you to know it has come down some. It is not as high as it used to be. President Biden is focused on what he can do about inflation, and he's working every day to do what he can to bring it down. It's a choice, and the feds are the ones who finally make the decision about whether or not the interest rates are going to rise. But the president is watching very closely. He's doing everything that he possibly can. And so, yes, we're going through a point in time where the items that we depend on every day are higher. But when you mention the pandemic, and you mentioned COVID, this country and this president did a fabulous job in putting food on the table, making sure that people had an opportunity to live a decent life, even though many people had been laid off. Many people had lost their jobs. But we did a great job in ensuring that we could do something real in order to help the families and the business community. The small businesses in this country and our Black businesses did very well. So this president has done well by the economy.
Congresswoman Beatty, you and I are from the Midwest.
Yes.
You and I are together often in that area talking to people. What they will say is they will agree with everything Congresswoman Waters said, but they will say that cereal went from $6.50 to $6. That ain't enough for me. What do we tell them?
Well, I think we have to remind them, and we need to do a better job of reminding them of all the things they did get. Think about those checks that individuals received for $1,400, the checks that they received in families for their children. And Congresswoman Waters was far too modest. One of the biggest things when you talk about the economy and wealth is home ownership. It was Maxine Waters that proposed more money than we'd ever had for housing in all of our allocation plans and made sure that people weren't evicted. So I remind them, while yes, some of the food products did come down and not enough, but you were able to keep a roof over your house, whether you were a homeowner or whether you were renting. We made sure through her leadership, through the Congressional Black Caucus, through President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, that we made a difference in Black lives. Whether that was making sure that we made a reinvestment and an investment in the child tax credit, whether we made through the American Rescue Plan, this president has done more for the American people, and especially Black Americans, than Trump ever did. Now, he may have purported that he did things. Well, you know, with him, you don't know if it's true or false. I believe mostly false. But I can tell you with what President Biden did, we backed him as members of Congress and as the Congressional Black Caucus. We led on those initiatives because we live the Black community.
Yeah.
We understand that.
Yeah.
And we've been in that fight prior to being in Congress, and we go back home every week standing with our constituents.
I see you in the amen corner
I
there,
am in
so I'm
the
going to let
amen
you
corner,
get chance. But
that's
let me
right.
just throw this and follow up on what Congresswoman Beatty said. The idea that there is a belief in some corners that they were better under Trump by virtue of the checks they were receiving in a time where the government, not Trump, but the government gave to assist in
Yes.
the pandemic and the like. So give a sense to those who are of that belief right now.
They're in error in their beliefs, number one. But before I jump to that, I really do want to piggyback and make sure that we continue with this housing conversation, specifically because you talked about Black folk really being upset about the cost of food. But what we're consistently hearing is that people are upset about the cost of housing right now as well, and the inability to build that generational wealth. And so I do want to make sure that we focus a little bit on another thing that this administration has done, which is the student loan debt relief that they have provided. That allows people to be able to buy homes. That allows them to be able to build the wealth that they need, not just in this generation, but for generations to come, because they are now reducing their debt to income ratio. And that is so important. And we know that the numbers show that when it comes to African Americans, we are disproportionately burdened by student loan debt. Now, I know that there are some people that say that he didn't do everything he said he was going to do, but we do have
Meaning Biden.
Correct, Biden. But we do have a Supreme Court that we can thank for that debacle. We have a Supreme Court that we can thank for a lot of the freedoms that we've lost or a lot of pushback that they have given this administration, as this administration has tried to make sure that they honored the promises that they made 4 years ago. So I just wanted to make sure that I talked about that. Now, let me talk about what Trump is really good at. I'm going to give him some praise right now. He is Mr. Propaganda. That is what he's good at. And so while most people don't understand because we don't really emphasize the work, as you just heard from my Sora Beatty, you just heard her talk about the work that Congresswoman Waters did to make sure that people could get that money. Let me tell you something. Those checks came from Congress. There's not enough emphasis on the fact that this was initiated in the Congress by congressional members who were going home to their districts and they were listening to their constituencies. They were the ones that initiated this. This was not a Trump-initiated thing. He did not care about making sure that people were going to hurt a little bit longer so that he could put his name on those checks. Those checks were delayed under Trump because he wanted to make it seem as if it was coming straight out of his own bank account. And the last part that I'll say about that is that people forget they got more than one check. They got one check from Trump. The rest of the checks that they got, they were from the Biden-Harris administration.
That's right.
But the
That's right.
problem is that they don't go around gloating and putting their name on everything as if they are kings and queens that delivered it straight from the monarchy.
Well, perhaps they should.
Should.
Well, okay.
Perhaps they should.
We've had that conversation.
Let me ask this very quickly before we have to hit a break, and that is, you mentioned generational wealth and housing and the like. Part of the issue, and this often, no matter who sits in the White House, is you're only going to be able to do so much from the Oval Office here, is interest rates. And interest rates are high. They're flat now, as we see. What are we going to be able to do to wrestle with that, particularly with inflation as it's been kind of holding on in spite of what the Feds have done? What can we do there?
As I alluded to earlier, the decision comes from the Feds, and Congress has no influence on the Feds. As a matter of fact, even at one point in time where those who wanted to get the Congress involved, of course it would have been a mess, but constitutionally it comes from the Feds. They watch it, they take a look at what is happening in the economy, whether or not people are purchasing, whether or not people are buying, whether or not they've slowed down, whether or not they're saving. We all want those interest rates to come down.
Yeah.
And we're hopeful that at the next Fed meeting that this probably will happen, where they will be able to reduce those interest rates.
All right, we'll take a quick break here. When we return, abortion on the ballot. Back in a minute.
We deserve bodily autonomy.
The court has spoken loud and clear.
Can you imagine being a teenager and being told your body is not truly yours?
The state of abortion rights in our country is like kind of terrifying because it just keeps getting cut back.
Is proudly responsible for overturning Roe v. Wade. And one has to ask, proudly responsible that 1 in 3 women of reproductive age now live in a state with an abortion ban?
Protecting my rights as a Black woman, my right to abortion. I don't think any man should have any say in what I choose to do with my body.
As a Christian, I don't support abortion, but I believe that a woman should have the right to make a decision for herself.
Welcome back to our BET News exclusive primetime special, What's at Stake? We want to turn our attention now to the divisive issue that many voters are extremely passionate about, reproductive rights. After the historic repealing of Roe versus Wade in 2022, more than 20 states have restricted abortion access. Joyce, let me start with you, if I may, based on what Ohio has done. So I know you want to talk about that.
Well, let me just say, this is the most consequential election of our lifetime. And I believe, as we did with another form of health care, the Affordable Care Act, women came out, Black women, white, brown women, came out in forces to be able to sustain that. And we were successful, even though our Republican colleagues more than 79 times tried to repeal it. Here we are again with Roe v. Wade. Here we are in Ohio when our Constitution was being challenged specifically because of abortion. Individuals came out, Black women and white women led, but let me just say, the brothers came out and voted, because it's not just an issue for women, it's a family issue. It's about you being able to make your own choice with what you want to do with your bodies. It's so important that the State of the Union focused on the whole issue of women's rights, women's reproductive rights. The President of the United States brought a guest in, several of us. I brought in Brittany Watts with that case that went across the United States with her arrest over a miscarriage. So when you think about speaking to the American public, and they want to go so far as to say whether you were raped, that you still could not have an abortion at any turn, whether your life was in jeopardy, that you could not have the right with your medical doctors to make that decision, we're not going to stand for that.
Conversely, your state is one of those states who is, planting a flag in the ground to say, no, we're not going to have it. What's the fight there for you, and what should people who live in those states look to?
Yeah, it's interesting because you've got California, where no challenges whatsoever. You have Ohio, who fought back. and then you've got Texas. And for people that don't know, Roe v. Wade is actually a case that came out of my district. It's a Dallas case.
That's right.
And so, you know, what I consistently tell Texas women is Texas women made sure that we led the way in making sure that we had access to reproductive health, and we are going to lead the way in the revolt as well. We had approximately 26,000 women that were raped in Texas just last year and impregnated as a result of those rapes. This is America. And you're talking about women having to go through something that you would maybe see in a third world country. That's not who we are. And so what people need to recognize is whether you're in California, whether you're in Ohio, or whether you're in Texas, this fight is an American fight. It's a fight that needs to be waged because guess what? There are those that say, especially if they're with the Heritage Foundation, that they want to make sure that we have a national abortion ban. We rested for 50 years and thought we were all good to go, and we weren't.
Look at what happened in Arizona.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where they went back to, I believe, 1864 to get a law that not only denied abortions to women, period, but they said you could go to jail if you defied the law. This is a serious issue, but I'm so proud of Kamala Harris. I'm so proud of her because she's taken this issue and she's gone across this country. She has created more conversation. More women are able to now talk about what happened to them. Many women have been very, very careful about exposing what has happened in their lives, whether they were raped or whether or not they had a miscarriage or whether or not they had an abortion. But now, because of Kamala Harris and because of what is happening in the abortion movement, now women are all prepared to join in, to talk about, to fight for our rights. Nobody has a right to tell a woman what she can or cannot do with her body. It is up to her and her mate or her family. But these right-wingers who are hypocrites, who are out there, you know, making this their #1 issue, it is all political with them. What can they do to attract that constituency that follows Trump and pretend that they are doing this because they are Christians? What can they say? What can they do? They're doing everything, but they are hypocrites, and people in the final analysis are not going to go with them.
Before we hit a break, Congresswoman Beatty, I want to ask you whether or not you believe we are in danger, particularly if Trump wins, of seeing federal law against abortion.
It is very difficult for me to even think about Trump winning because absolutely, if we don't get out and vote, what we're experiencing now we think is traumatic. You haven't seen anything if this man is elected because our colleagues on the other side are responding now to one single person, and that's Donald Trump. So I'm going to sit back and take a different approach and say to everyone listening to us, watching us, it is our responsibility to take this on. 87% of the population supports us being able as women to protect our own reproductive rights. That may include getting an abortion because that's our choice.
All right, we'll take a break here. When we come back, the fight to eliminate DEI. Back in a moment.